Today, we have an exciting session on 5G security, a crucial aspect as we advance into a hyper-connected world. Security challenges in 5G networks are more complex than ever, and it is essential to understand the threats, risks, and countermeasures that safeguard our network and data. To introduce the speaker for the day is Mr. Pranesh, a visionary entrepreneur and technologist, and the CEO and founder of Proyava Innovations, which is headquartered in Mysore, India. He is leading the development of India's first 5G security test system, and his groundbreaking work has been recognized and awarded by esteemed entities, including the Department of Telecommunications, India. With a vast experience working across North America, Africa, Southeast Asia, and Europe, Mr. Pranesh has contributed to R&D, the research and development, global services, and startup ecosystem in multicultural environments. Holding a master's in communication application, he specializes in cybersecurity, and he has earned multiple internationally recognized security certifications, including ISC2, CISSP, ECCH, and so on, alongside project management certifications. He has also authored and submitted two patents in cybersecurity, focusing on detection and signatureless ransomware detection. We are truly honored to have him with us today. Let's give a warm virtual welcome to Mr. Pranesh.
Yeah, thank you, Ruth. Thank for the introduction. Hello.
I request all the participants to mute whenever you're leaving due to network connectivity. When you rejoin, make sure that your mic is muted. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thanks a lot, Ruth, for the introduction. Welcome all for this interesting session. And I believe this is the last theory session, right? Definitely, I'll make it more simple and interesting as much as possible.
Yes.
Yeah. Now, see, agenda which is already set. It is mainly focusing on 5G security threats and challenges. And what is that something work which is already done, and what is the try to give insight about different aspect of security on 5G. And see, on the content deliberately for first two sections, if you see there is no 5G prefix, right? Talking about security basics, security principle, and all. Because 5G security is nothing, it is not standalone. It is combination of security fundamentals, which is evolved over decade. Those are going to be applied, and those are getting applied on 5G. That I'll be introducing to start, so that it is not something I'm talking totally in a different way, directly jumping into the 5G itself. And those are fundamental understandings are very much required and essential as well. Right? And at the last section, I'll try to give insight of whatever you can say my personal input on someone who want to build on the security career path, not necessarily 5G, right? Of course, including 5G. Right? See, let's start with security basics, right? See, first of all, why do we need security, right? Means there is something we value, right? And we valued means there need to be some object which should have some value, right? And by defined means either whether we are consuming or we are holding it or we are owning it, right? For any purpose. Yeah. Now in the security, when we talk about security, you might have heard about multiple terms, right? Information security, network security, cyber security, physical security. There are multiple parts, right? Basically, this is nothing but what is that object you focus to secure. In information security, you focus information as an asset which has some value, right? In case of email security, you consider email as your precious object, right? That you want to ensure the securing part, right? That's the only difference. Otherwise, there's no big definition around prefixing security. Again, at this point of time itself, you can say information security is a superset. Fine. Information security, wherever it is held in database network, either in transit, either it's in IT infrastructure, or whether it is connected to cyber, everything, everything considered within information security domain. Right? Now, securing some asset means from what aspect? It is from confidentiality, integrity, and availability part. Right? This many of you might have heard. This called CIA trident. Right? Something means what is it? Something value which has with value means it is not necessarily it is a tangible part. It is something means it could be a people life, health, asset, information, or equipment. Right? And asset, don't try to visualize. Always it will be a physical asset like any of the electronic equipments or any of the precious metals or any of those things. It could be virtual as well. It could be as virtual as reputation, right? And value again, it is a tangible and non-tangible both, right? And here we are talking about value to someone means value to individual, corporate, government, countries, right? Any of the stakeholders which they consider it is their asset. And it's a means it is securing by means either defined or implemented through certain controls. Means defined means it is securing not by any random mechanisms. It has to be well defined and implemented consciously. That's what the means here. Right? Now this is the slide. It is at very high level to start to set the context. Now slowly we'll get into the specific, right? Now the security principle always applicable in transactional context, right? There is certain object where it could be network, data, money, or any of the system, and there is a subject, whether it is a owner, person, or access channel by through electronics media through other system, which will be subject will be interact with the object by access means entering into the building or connecting through wireless, or it will be making a contact to access the object properties. Again, transaction context, who is going to access this? Access means it will be in the individual, corporate, or government through defined process. On the right hand side, you see security object, information asset, securing through certain principles of confidentiality, integrity, and availability on the object. What I mean on the object? Confidentiality of the object, integrity of the object, availability of the object, that those need to be secured. Right? Again, it is important to understand the information asset. That doesn't mean it is only the electronic data in terms of the files or database. It includes people as well. Just give an example. Where is that people or information which is held in someone's memory or understanding their experiences? If you are in a corporate domain already, you would have signed certain non-disclosure clause agreement while joining, or if you're doing a researcher, or if you're already employee, right? Even in you are in certain education institution where you are in R&D, you are signing certain non-disclosure agreement. Means something which you gained understanding, even it is virtual in the mind brain, which you are not supposed to share outside. Means this you as an individual also consider as an information asset, right? It could be just the procedure, way of doing it, right? Data, it is electronic or paper or any of those things, right? It is whether it could be configuration, it could be reports, it could be logs, it could be a Xerox printout, it is a credit card information, healthcare information, any of those data. And it's a software and hardware, of course. Means anywhere the information is held, transported, accessed, is considered as information asset. Right? See, now, accessing means The way someone will secure is through multiple steps or through these principles, right? Access means through identification as a first step. Like identification means the subject will identify themselves by either. Can I request some of you? I think you are on mute. Yeah, please. If you have any question, please raise. No problem. See, identification means subject identifying themselves either with the username, email ID, or anything. Which generally, as an example, you will show in the gate to the security guard, right? Either it could be photo or username, or you will log in with your email ID, right? That's what. And authentication, which using some of the factors. Some of the factors means only that a subject possesses that information, like password or biometric. Hello. I think someone is unmute. Okay, thank you. Yeah. Means using identification and authentication, the verification to allow to access the object is provisioned. Means authorized to access. Means whether that identification after authentication it is authorized to access the object or not, right? Means access means the identification and authorization might have multiple roles, means customer, clerk, manager, security guard, CEO, and any of those things, right? Then once authorization is made, then to recreate that event in future, there is an audit entry. Means audit entry, but every information about the event means when, how, where, uh, how much, right? Any of every details about that object access, it will be created for the purpose of tracking, right? Then it is not only collecting the information about the tracking, also the summary of multiple events will be created for accounting, right? Means it is a history of all the audit entries will get created, and it is these are one after another. This is a sequence of steps for any of the subject versus object. Now here there is one security principle called non-repetition. Means having all this information collected, at no point of time subject will be having a freedom to claim they did not access the object. Means that is called non-repetition. Means non-repetition is possible only if it's a sufficient information is collected in the secured environment about auditing and accounting. Right? Here there is one additional information need to be aware. Especially in the second step, it is called authentication. To make it foolproof, there are more than one authentication factors might get used. Means what is the more than one authentication factors? If you are familiar with making credit card, debit card transactions, in addition to typing the card entry CVV details, you might ask to enter the OTP, right? Means these multi-factors are mainly of three types. Means what is that something you and only you know, and what is that you have, and what is that you are, right? For example, what is that you know? Example is the password, and what is that you have is could be your CVV, which is printed backside the card, right? And what is that you are? Could be a biometric or iris, right? Any of those things. And see, now you know sharing password, mobile or PIN. What does it mean? Authentication freedom you are transferring to someone else, right? Means it is as good as now you lost the credibility of owning the access to object, right? It is as important as this, right? Two-factor authentication means there are more than one factor involved, right? It should not be of the same type. For example, setting two password, it is not considered as multi-factor authentication. Factors has to be separate. Right? Now, next, slowly coming to means what is that? It is the subject is trying to access the object. Here, those objects are nothing but these are called assets, which has certain tangible and non-tangible values, right? Because asset is having a value, it will be having a threat. Means some unauthorized subject will try to gain access, control over asset, right? And if asset is not secured, and it will have certain vulnerabilities. Well, the asset which has a threat and which also has a vulnerabilities poses the risk of losing it. Means losing the any of the aspect of confidentiality, integrity, or confidentiality, the CIA, right? So, fine. Here, example of asset is information, the network, the systems, right? Physical asset like any money, gold, any of those things. Confidential information like IPR and trade secrets, that kind of thing. And threat could be accessing through unprotected network and keeping the door open, not securing with proper lock, right? Those are things. And flaws or weakness means unpatched system. These are all vulnerabilities, right? And vulnerabilities, there's one important thing is it's a human error. Not necessarily it is someone is some asset is having vulnerable, which is consciously all the time. There could be some unconscious human error is also possible, right? Now, once you have an asset which has vulnerabilities and exposed to threats, there is a when the risk arises, then that need to be managed. You can just the definition means unwanted effect of exploiting the vulnerabilities, right? And this risk associated with the subject, means, and object, if any of those things, fine, right? Now that when there is a risk that need to be managed, means what are the different ways to manage the risk? Either you accept the risk, avoid, transfer, or reduce as possible. Fine. And here in any information asset, one key aspect need to be remembered is even if these are considered as a technical aspect, right? 5G security, cyber security, all those things. In any of those security standards, guidelines, human life is considered as most valued asset. Fine. Okay, this has to be remembered. Fine. Okay. Going to the next, and this is what the threat and the you can say attack, the security attack sequence means threat actor could be a individual, malicious, or it will be an unconscious user. It could be outside organization, it could be inside organization, and using the threat agent tools and techniques are bots, right? And have you ability to use multiple attack vector, not necessarily only using the tool. Like attackers will be compromised credentials, malwares, or SQL injection, any of those technical terms. Using this, attack will be made on the attack surface. What is the attack surface? The boundary at which the object will be start making its visibility, right? In case of healthcare, if we say what is the attack surface of the malaria disease is the skin. And in COVID, what is the attack surface? It is something, it is a breathe air or any of those things, right? Similarly, in case of network or it is a cyber related environment, attack surface is the website, the network ports, right? The application which exposed to the public world, those are attack surfaces, right? When attack surface is having a security weakness, means these are not properly configured, or these are having conscious, unconscious application technology related weakness, and which may or may not have a full security controls which are implemented, right? And once these controls are breached, controls are no longer effective, then that will result in multiple impact, not only technical impact, means losing the data or system is getting down or any of those things, inefficiencies, or it will have business impact as well. Means financial reputation, any of the complaints or competitor losing the competitive advantage as well. And see, now there is a totally you might think these are all disconnected information on the security part, but when we get into a security, then you will realize these are all integrated. They're no longer these are separate. And there is a concept called defense in depth, right? It's a DID certain place it's called. Means it is not just the even though the data or files are considered as an asset, these are not standalone. Mean data will be accessed through certain applications. Applications will be deployed in certain endpoints or systems. We'll have a network access, and network will have a perimeter, right? This is one of the well-known diagram which I picked from the open that the Google kind of thing. You can go through these terms and this thing in detail, right? What I want to highlight is any of this ensuring the security is not just a one-step activity. It will be on the nested level at the data application endpoint, network, and perimeter, that level, right? At multiple places. Again, it is not on the one place. It's the multiple places in the environment. Right? Now, this even the nested, when I said the controls means securing asset by certain security control means the control also will have multiple categories. Categories are management. In some places, it's called administrative as well. Means management controls are administrative controls. As an example, the security policies, procedures, and control definitions, right? Like our nation will have a password policy, right? Means audit procedure or awareness training. These are all examples of administrative or the management security controls, right? Just by certain management control itself, it is possible to control the security, to enhance the security postures as much as possible. Then the next one is the technical control, which are nothing but tools and techniques which used to ensure the security, like firewall, IDS, IPS, VPN, and strong password and reCAPTCHA, that kind of thing. Mean administrative, technical, and the third is also important, which is called a physical controls. Means these are related to the infrastructure and environment security. Means having a CCTV camera, locks, right? Fire safety, right? These are physical security. These are physical security control categories, right? And here there are some two definitions one need to be aware in the security domain. There is an event, means there is an observable occurrence, right? In system, network, or environment. Means someone is trying to log in. Means that could be event, right? Means there is some report generated. That's also an event. System is restarted. It's an event, right? Incident means when event is analyzed and it is confirmed or suspected as a security breach. Means certain additional attributes are associated with the event from a security point of view. What does it mean? It is a continuous 3 times login event with wrong password. Means that will be an example of incident, right? And that requires certain response. A response could be reporting to some IT manager or blocking the user, any of the, right? Raising the alarm signal, any of those things, right? A response is not part of the incident. Incident is just confirmed or suspected breach. Means by the definition, you can see any incident, it has to be event before, right? Only once it analyzed and attributes different, then only it will become a incident, right? Now we said security control categories, right? Now the category is not, it is at the high level grouping. Means the now different type of control functions. Means certain controls which are preventive only. Means it is avoid the incident from occurring. Means it is not, it is to avoid incident, first of all. Two, it is a activity, right? Preventive means before something happened, means not allowing user without password, right? That kind of thing, right? There are multiple preventive action. Detective means there is some event happening. There are controls which are defined to detect, means identify details associated with an incident, means it is a 3 times wrong password. It is a detection part, right? Then the corrective part means fix the system of the incident happened, means after 3 times login, corrective action could be go and disable that user from further attempt, that kind of thing, right? And deterrent is means some are having a what fence and all around the house, means it be CCTV camera. These are all deterrent controls, first of all, for bad actor for not to commit the incident. And recovery is anyway incident that happened, right? Now how do you recover back to the normal condition? The recovery controls means restoring the backup data to make it active again, right? Compensative controls are nothing but there is no way you'll be able to have a security controls on certain situations, incident. Instead of direct solution, you take compensative control. For an example, it's a taking an insurance, right? It is a compensative security control, right? Again, it means these are all different security control functions. What I mentioned in the previous uh, slide is control categories. Then this preventive control itself can be of 3 category, means administrative preventive controls, technical preventive controls, physical preventive controls. These 3 are totally different controls. Fine. And it is not necessarily any security posture need to have all the controls in place, right? It is totally based on the systematic analysis of the asset risk, and what security professional will decide which are the threat with vulnerabilities which poses the security risk, applying the respective controls. It is that way, right? And again, having said this is a conceptual level, this is not something, it is a one-time activity. And this keep assessing the risk, keep enhancing the security posture. It will be continuous, right? And it will keep evolving, because when the initial threat analysis is done, certain threats themselves may not be applicable, right? For example, 2 3 years back, anything related with the quantum computing might not considered as a security threat. But now every government and every country considers the quantum computing capability itself poses the new security threat. Right? And this to define controls and providing the threat vectors are the same. Multiple industry forums, government institutions are involved to bring the clarity, not only the security professions. And example like ISO, NIST, the National Center for Communication Security, and PCA. These are multiple forums. They keep defining the security posture for respective domains. Right? See, now this is an example I provided for NIST. This is a US based, and the ISO. This is an international standard. They define the security information security, the standardization part. Right? Standardization means it is just the guideline. Following this will ensure certain guarantee, right? Certain guarantee if it is followed and implemented diligently, right? Still, it will not give you the step-by-step implementation part. It is some security engineer or security expert has to ensure that part. Right? And again, coming to the last of the general sections, it is a security, total security context. It is because of there is an asset which pose the risk and which has to be protected through controls, right? And it is having implementing controls is not the one-time activity. and it has to be continuously assessed and evolved. Fine? Fine. Now we'll come to 5G security context. Fine? Now, if you say what is 5G in 5G from a different point of view, means if you see from technology point of view, 5G is nothing but a cloud embedded TCP, IP, AS1 and security algorithms. There's a collection of this, right? Means now, if you see from a system perspective, 5G is nothing but having a integrated ecosystem of mobile SIM, radio tower, data server, test systems, and right the connectivity part that those aspects, right? And if you see from a domain perspective, if you say the 5G wireless enterprise system, entertainment domain, IoT domain, right? Means if you see from a different perspective, the 5G is providing a different outlook, right? Now, each of these views poses the different security challenges. Fine. Now, in 5G, what are the assets which need to be considered under security per se is, again, it need to be looked from a different perspective of what is the asset in 5G is, it's a user, right? There is subscriber and enterprises which they depend or which is used to define the 5G itself. User is the valuable asset, and there is a data, customer profile and the configuration and the privacy information, right? System configuration, any of this data is valuable asset. And applications, there are 5G applications, IoT applications, right? Certain things. And what are the different endpoints? UE, right? And the mobile tower and the database and the switching server and the total network, whether it could be core network or SBA RAN or controlled spectrum radio antenna itself, right? These are the network of this equipment itself is a valuable asset, and not limited to only 5G as a network. 5G also will have a perimeter as an asset, means 5G interworking with other technologies like satellite or 4G or any of the variant of the 5Gs, right? And 5G also will have a national boundary which need to be protected, right? Means national boundary perimeter that need to be considered as an asset. Again, it's a repeat statement. Life is the most precious asset even in 5G security, right? It's a health, not only the human, the environment safety is also the part of the scope. Means, as example, you can say it is the electromagnetic radiations are what level it should be. Means what kind of threat it poses on the not only human being, it's the animal, birds, and insects and tree that is also considered as the security under security readiness, right? And it is values not only tangible, not imagine tangible and emotional values. Means emotional value, what is that? If you are talking at there is a call drop, right? Call drop means it's as part of the process flow, right? It will be if it is a disconnected, again it will be connected, but the emotional value will go down, right? That also will be considered as the under security person, right? Now, before coming to now, given different perspective of the 5G, now we are talking before coming to 5G or security architecture. Now, I'm sure many of everyone you are from engineering or science background. You would have familiar with architecture. What would the definition of architecture? Still, I wanted to touch base quickly, right? There's a terms called requirement and specification, right? Requirement is the expectation from a customer or the owner which they are going to use the solution or system for their problem statement, right? It is from their words, their expectation. The specification is analyze the requirement, which will become a clear boundary. It has to be met, right? That's why if you see, if you already attended, you would have attended in previous sections. All 3GPP standards, they are called technical specifications. Means those need to be followed as is, right? That is the only reason where you can say if you buy any mobile, it will work, right? means irrespective of the make, brand, or any of those things, right? Because every stakeholder has to follow the specifications which are set forth by standardization body. And for the standardization body, they create, they analyze the requirement from the industry, domain, governments, right, countries. Now, the requirement specification will have a functional and non-functional part. Functional is nothing but a dynamic. Non-functional is a static part. Means only when it is action, then only it will be visible. What is the example of non-functional? It's a capacity, performance, security, right? Training, deployment. These are all non-functional requirements. Now, why I elaborated this means architecture is nothing but creating a base for non-functional alone. Right? Now, for non-functional requirement, architecture base has to be created. What is the example of architecture base? Means for a building, in case of civil engineering, the way it should look. What is a fire escape plan? What is a plumbing architecture? What is a plumbing, how it will ensure electric connectivity and the floor plan, right? These are all, everything is related to this, could be same building, right? Same design, right? For the same specification, but it is a different point of view, right? Non-functional will be considered as architecture. For the design, taking the functional and the architecture, then it will be implemented, verifying against all the previous steps. Right? Means architecture is nothing but specific viewpoint of the requirement. Right? Specifically, there could be multiple viewpoints. There is specific requirement. Right? Now, when it comes to 5G architecture, right? You would have already seen these diagrams where 5G network architecture is nothing but the combination of UE, RAN, UPF, AMF, signaling, control plane, data network, SBA kind of thing. That view, and if you say other view, you would have seen about network slicing up, URLC, EMBC, and MNTC. Everything it is referring to the same requirement, specification of 5G network and a 5G network environment, where you are seeing the network architecture from a network architecture point of view. Right? Whereas you need to look differently for a security point of view, which is from the security architecture. If you are seeing from the slicing, ORAN, charging and billing, and the deployment, what we are talking about is the same problem statement, same specification, the V will be different, right? Means if I suddenly get into a security architecture and till yesterday you got into network architecture, you don't need to get confused. Means we are talking about the same thing, right? Here in security architecture is called ME and USIM. Here everything is together within UE, right? Everything. Right? Now, security architecture, this is elaborated in 3GPP standard, and the whole 5G security architecture has to adhere to this. Right? And what we are talking about is this is split into multiple security domain. Now, if you see network access, network user, application, and this visibility and configuration. Now, the moment if you see this list and where these security domains are applicable, you try to map to that defense in depth, right? Means securing from multiple layers, right? These are exactly following those principles, right? Securing the user, securing the application, securing the network access, then network itself, then securing the visibility and all, right? In addition, but here it is looked whole 5G as a one network ecosystem. The perimeter is not considered as part of this, but it is considered in a separate section. In overall security context, perimeter security is also will be considered, but it is considered as a little bit separate than the integrated. Right? Means why it is separate? Perimeter security need to be evaluated separately, considering what perimeter you are talking, whether it is the adjacent network or between two operators or it is between India and outside country. It is that perspective. It need to be analyzed separately to apply security controls. Right? And now, on the same from the network architecture point of view, there are explicit functions. Means in 5G there are no longer components. These are network, these explicit functions which are identified and designated to ensure the security functionalities are covered. These are AUSF, one, authentication and authentication credential repositories. It is in UDM and SIDF, right? And again within SDM and security anchor. If you see the relation between this is, there are systems, there are functions which takes care of the network security. There are functions which takes care of user subscriber security, right? And these are explicit components only for security, right? But these are not the only thing, right? In addition to overall 5G network security, 5G overall security, the security of each component will be responsibility of the individual component in addition to this. And means UPF will have its own security requirement and guidelines, which interacts with what are the interfaces. RAM will have its own security principles need to be applicable. What does this mean of this table? Is nothing but these are explicit entities for the overall security part. Because there are the heterogeneous network components and connectivities, there is explicit anchor function which manages to look everything as one. Now, there is an additional concept called zero trust. I mean, just to give what is meant by zero trust, if you remember during the landline era, means when there is someone is dialing the outgoing call, means it has to be that subscriber, it is coming from that terminal alone, right? It continued in 2G, to an extent 3G as well, means certain identification authentications are taken as granted, right? Whereas in 5G security is based on zero trust. Zero trust in the sense, again, the purpose of zero trust is not mistrust, it is to ensure the security. This is one of the guideline, and this is a principle, this is a way of ensuring security. Means any of the ecosystem, connecting, talking, using service, providing service, interacting, they don't consider the peer entity as it is. Means there will be an explicit authentication, identification, audit that level of access functionality between user to network and network to user, both, and between two operators. Earlier, between two operators, there is a dedicated line, right? Means that's called trunk, right? It is not the customer line. Between country to country, means those are considered as a dedicated connection. Now, no longer between two mobile network operators, they will authenticate and verify connectivity in the real time for any transactions. Right? Same thing with other user as well. And external data network, internet, nothing is get trusted. Means even the hardware platform, everything. Right? What in by data? Where is static, right? There is no way you can say trusted data, untrusted data, right? Any application which access, host which use application, network which you having multiple host and devices, perimeter which has multiple network, and physical environment, right? Everything will follow the zero trust model. Means there will be a multiple level. Each entity will verify other entity explicitly all the time. No assumption will be made. These are principles. And in case of 5G security, the standardization considered explicitly. In fact, it is the first time 3GPP introduced security test specification. I mean, they were not explicit before 5G, right? Because this much of importance is given from 5G onwards. Right? I mean, earlier and all, security doesn't mean security was not taken care. It was taken care implicitly, right? In the procedure definition, in the deployment configuration part. Here it is made explicit specifications. Right? As a reference, this 3340 and 33501, these are the security, it's the core security specifications. From there, you will get a multiple references of the specific. Right? Now, what are the 5G network security threat landscape? Means if you see network as a whole, right? Network is nothing but there are edge, edge computing environment, there's access network, there's a user devices, there is a gateways, and there is a multiple connectivities, right? Means what are the different threat is? Illegal intercept, DAS and flash traffic, just keep creating a dummy traffic, and privacy breach. Fake base station means someone will try to act as they are the base station kind of thing. Means this is a well-known security threat in Wi-Fi domain. Right? And slice and the resource threat, resource threat originating from the internet, not necessarily from 5G alone, because 5G is using the backhaul internet, public and the private internet. Right? And there's a policy conflict, means policy in terms of the access policy, user policy, and configuration capacity part, that person, it is a conflict also, it poses the security threat. And these risks are already assessed by 3GPP. And when you say if you are a security professional, you should never be considering these are the only possible threat. There are threats which are beyond this, which are not perceived by standardization body. That way, it need to be considered. In case of what this slide is talking about, the network security threats. Sorry. And now, what are the different threat on the wireless connectivity? Means someone is listening in between.
Sir, good afternoon. Sir, କୁହନ୍ତୁ.
Yeah.
ଆଜି କଣ କହିଥିଲେ କଥା?
Who's that? Can you please?
ମୁଁ କହିଲି ଯୋଉ ଇଏ ପରେ.
Hello.
They're working on it. Yes, yes. Please.
ଭାବୁଛି ଆଉ ଗୋଟେ ଦିନ ଚିଟାଣ ଯିବ ତ.
Hello.
କାଲିକି ପହରଦିନ ମତେ ପହରଦିନ କଥା ହବା. ପହରଦିନ କଥା ହେଲେ ଶନିବାର ଆଡକୁ ଛୁଟି ଅଛି, ଦେଖା କରି.
Hello.
Please, let's wait. I'm just working on it.
Ma'am, please mute that person.
Please go on mute, please. I think it will disturb others as well, right? It will disturb the flow. Please go on mute. See, there are security threats on the wireless connectivity. It is someone is listening in between, or it's a DDoS. Keep attacking with the wireless devices on the network tower or the connectivity, and or it is try to jam the wireless network, or in the man in the middle. Means because wireless is getting transmitted equally, right? Across multiple directions. These are the different threat on the wireless domain. These different threats are assessed by 3GPP already, right? Means here I'm not trying to give you the solution, how these are contained, how these are solved, right? 3GPP standard of defining wireless encryption, authentication, and that radio MIMO technology, these are already taken care. Here, from a security point of view, these are risks which are already assessed and taken care. And on the network segment, what I mean by network segment, if you see 5G network architecture, that itself is having multiple segment, like means collection of user plane itself could be in a separate network segment. Means network segment, if some of you are not able to visualize, these are separate network zones of with certain class of same IP address category. That you can visualize as a network segment. Your service-based architecture network functions could be a separate network zone. Right? In ORAN architecture, the collection of one or multiple CUs and DUs could be separate network zone. Right? when you're those network segment themselves, because it is a no longer physical, it could be a logical virtual environment as well. The network segment itself will have a multiple threats related to DOS attack, hijacking the network segment, and the penetration attack, and configuration overflow, and data leak, those kind of things, right? Network segment is the access backhaul and the core. That is what the high level is considered, right? Now, the next security control, what when I say the security is taken care in the multiple nested level, this is explained in simple way in this picture. What does it mean is UE is having connectivity with RAN, having a mobility context in AMF, having a session context in SMF, right? Means what is that security it need to have when it is connecting to GNB, AMF or SMF. This diagram means at each level, when it is connecting and transmitting and receiving radio signal from the RU, GNB, it will follow certain security guidelines of ensuring radio security part. Authentication, mutual authentication, zero trust between UE and GNB. When it is talking about the registration and mobility, the UE again performs explicit zero trust mechanism of authentication identity, that connectivity part with AMF. When it is establishing a session, again there is an additional control plane level security controls be performed with SMF. Means even though it is the same UE, user SIM is involved in a end-to-end session, there is a multiple places where the security controls will be applied. Not only in the control plane, when it is actually transmitting data, there is a again additional user plane security controls will be applied. Right? Security control means it is not only just authentication, it is a encryption, integrity verification, confidentiality, right? Use of what control? Using preventive control, detective control. Those controls will be applied at multiple places. Right? It is not only that, when certain SBA for service-based architecture functions will use certain services from the other network functions, they again will perform service discovery and identification authentication to get service from the other network functions. Right? Means it is done in multiple places in a nested way, in a repeated way. Again, in the next day security control, it is not only in case of the standalone 5G, when the 5G interworking with other environment, it could be other environment like other 5G network of other operator, or it is a adjacent network of 4G or satellite communications, or any of those situations. Again, there will be nested security controls where having a explicit security protection proxy between two environments. They will ensure between two environments explicit securing their own respective perimeters are secured, right? Perimeters are secured in what level? There is a transport tunneling, interconnecting, signaling, user plane, and the radio part. There are multiple ways, each step, the multiple nested way, the security will be ensured. Now, when we are talking about security will be taken care, what will be taken care? Nothing but applying certain security algorithms. Means ciphering, again it is a 3GPP standard. Standardize what ciphering algorithm need to be used. Ciphering algorithms when you are transmitting from one system to another system, so that it will not be it will be able to reconstruct only at the other genuine subject, right? Means integrity, so that it is not getting distorted in between transport. And authentication, before transmitting, you authenticate the other entity so that the information will be transported to this. And network connectivity, even though not believing on the IP connectivity and the TCP, there is an explicit point-to-point VPN will be ensured with connectivity. And service-based architecture, it is within the core network, because there is a cloud virtual environment will come into picture following HTTP2. That's a enhanced security. SSL will be made mandatory with the explicit non-static key. Right? And using key, there is an additional enhancement will be done. And earlier and all the subscriber privacy part, right? It's a logical part, means identity of the user. Even though it is possible to reconstruct, instead of referring the user identity, location, place explicitly, there is a indirect way it is being used. And user plane, not only on the control and network part, user plane will follow the tunnel IP tunnels part, and with application level encryption mechanism based on that. Again, if you follow 33501, the explicit algorithm implementation and where and what conditions which procedure need to be applicable, need to be applied, it is explicitly mentioned there. And now we're talking about network virtualization function. See, now the legacy telecom environment are based on the physical infrastructure, data center, that kind of environment. Now network 5G brings advantage of cloud virtual environment. Means it will be a hypervisor, it will be a Docker Kubernetes, right? Virtualization from a multiple level. Virtualization at the hardware level, operating system applications, or the network virtualization itself. Everything is a network virtualization function. When you follow network virtualization, then there is managing the virtual environment itself will become a need, right? And first of all, why network virtual function required? So that the business, customer, applications growth will be gradual, so that it will not be a burden on the operator, on the application service provider, not to invest on whole infrastructure, which is the most expensive part, right? Expensive part after the spectrum, right? So that they gradually evolve and they will gradually able to tune to the requirement of the market, right? Customer demand. Right? That's the reason network virtualization function will be a need, and that is mandated. Now to manage network virtualization function, there is a explicit management function will become a necessity, right? And there are multiple architectures, and mostly the example HC Mono, right? It's one of the well-known virtualization management function architecture, right? This is being followed. Now this is only introduction about network virtualization function, right? Now adapting virtualization in 5G itself poses certain security risk. What are those security issues? And then because network functionalization is an unauthorized access. In the virtualized environment, if the management access got compromised, it is nothing but it is a whole, the operator network environment itself will get compromised. And shared infrastructure side effect, right? Because a certain if two operators are sharing from the same cloud provider, then it will create infrastructure overlap and misbalance, those kind of things. And VMSK means if some virtual machine become out of control of the management control, right? Plot data leak, configuration bugs, kind of threat. It is whole network getting compromised, and zombie resources if they're gone out of control. Data override side effect, because the virtual environment finally it is running on the same physical environment, could be, right? And if the underlying hardware become a failure, then it will become a single point of failure, right? Then the solution is, it is nothing but these are all common well-known cloud security risk and controls. Generally, these are already there in place as a technology, which are already adopted by cloud service providers, data center providers, right? Those that need to be applied for 5G network virtualization function security as well. Right? Now, if you start seeing, now cloud security is becoming part of 5G security already, right? Now, Again, in addition, now the second complexity is because of certain advantage of 5G technology itself, there is a concept called network slicing is being bought, right? I think you'd have already gone through those detailed session earlier. The slicing is currently it is categorized into three parts: EMMB for broadband AR, EBR, and high bandwidth related stuff, and massive MTC for massive IoT kind of device applications like security camera across the city and those kind of thing. And the critical IoT where the latency has to be very low for things like medical healthcare and the sensitive security kind of requirements. And now and not necessarily this is limited to only three, right? When the 5G standalone architecture will come into picture, there could be addition of more slices, or there will be a slice definition which are combination of these slices that will get evolved, right? These are all bring certain advantage, right? Key specialty in the 5G itself. This is the first time it is getting introduced. Again, it is to this has brought into a concept for a positive impact of efficient usage of the infrastructure and commercial advantage. Unlike in 4G and LTE, operator will not end up placing too many infrastructure where without knowing what kind of application will get utilized in certain areas or timeline. And there are certain innovative services also it is possible to introduce going forward. Now, this slicing itself, introducing the slicing itself, will bring certain issues and the threat, right? Means each slice need to be managed. Earlier in 4G and LTE, operators were supposed to manage certain infrastructure, right? And those infrastructure will become a virtual environment that will need virtualization security. Now there are multiple virtual environment for each slice. Now it will become a multiply of what virtualization brings into complexity, right? Means now these are more or less these are security threats, like one operator managing multiple cloud environment, and like each slice will become independent environment itself to manage. That kind of security risk it poses, right? Where access to the management exposure function for each slice, right? Whole impact on the whole service of that slice category, right? And the supervision and the wrong configuration and those kind of things, right? And this also having a explicit specification. It is a 33, I think I'll correct it. It is not the 81, I think 801. 33801 specification provides explicit network slice security requirement and the specifications. Now we're talking about the virtualization slice, and the core network itself need to be looked as a separate aspect to be brought under security control, and provide core network into zones, right? Core network itself will have a multiple zone. Like one example is ESBA control plane, user plane would be a one category of one classification of zones. Or whole control plane including SBA will be one zone, or user plane as well will be a second zone. It is a possibility is there, right? Now, because of 5G network, core network providing a flexibility in defining architecture, that itself brings the security risk of following edge connectivity of the user plane, which is hardware intensive. Now, similarly, the radio network itself, radio network earlier it is just the Node B. Now, because of the ORAN, certain things are hardware. Hardware will bring additional physical security part, the RU and DU, and which again on the cloud. Fine. Now, earlier, what the certain operators, they were taking the only radio network as a service part, that no longer a independent security requirement. Now, the GNB, the radio network itself, will become a cloud security, the tower physical security and network security, zone security as well. More or less, again, it is my perception is the RAN security is the most complex security among all different security aspects within 5G itself. Yeah? And there is if you are familiar with, I'm not sure you've gone through the ORAN introduction. GNB again will have a E1 F1 through managed through AI and the multi GNB configuration control that will bring a additional security control, additional security requirements. Now, if you gone through this spec of 381.460.470, this is the user plane control plane on the radio, and the user plane control plane on the GNB to core and the user UPF, and the GNB to ORAN management system. All aspects of network concerned security. Now, when you say what are the different type of or different category where the security will become a critical, now who is taking care of defining the standard specification itself, right? All this classification, threat specification, multiple industries involved in security standardization, which are already there as a specification, right? It is not only the global and local adaptation. It is a multiple expertise from the network, cloud, enterprise, device, IoT, and governments where security, defense sector where involved, which are taken care in the security standardization. Right? And 3GPP taken responsibility of bringing the integrated standard, means referring HC, IETF, ORAN, they are all independent forums on their own. 3GPP first time they combined, they taken and support and they integrated into a common security standard for 5G. Now, standardization is not only limiting to a global, because each country, they consider the telecommunication as the critical asset, national critical asset, including India, Government of India, Ministry of Communication, earlier it is a DOT, has explicitly formed National Center for Communication Security, NCCS, right, to bring the standardization of 5G security part. How did they contributed? Similar to 5G security, Indian government, NCCS is a standardization body. It is similar to 3GPP specification. NCCS brought up ITSAR standards. Means these are standard specifications. Through industry experts, R&D organization, operators, and the ecosystems, everyone contributed in defining Indian security standards. Right? And it is not standalone. It is referring to the global standard as well and taken care of indigenous requirement as well. Right? And so that it is these specifications are in sync with inter-ministry input as well, the human resource, defense and commerce as well, to ensure the localized Indian national level security is also considered. Right? Now, ITSR, it's a government recognized asset, and if you go through this website NCCS, there is a list of security standards. Means if you go through each component, means starting from switch router to AMF, GNB, ORAN, SMF, each component 5G security test specifications. Security test specifications are defined by defined by NCCS in ITSR documents. Fine. Now we'll come to last section of the presentation. Now, security career path, right? If you wanted to understand what is the security career path, or if you want to get into security career path, see, in security career, there are broadly 3 categories. Security management means where CISOs, auditors, managers, which they define the security policies, they audit, they implement, they plan, right? They estimate, they execute the security program, right? That profession is explicit. And security engineering means implementing the security controls. Means it could be a network design, configuring the firewall, secure guideline, fixing the security vulnerabilities. Means these are technical expertise which they mitigate, they implement, they correct the security aspects. And there is a third aspect is there, it is a security assessment. Means it is a verifying security posture for performing a security test. Means ethical hacking, what you call vulnerability assessment and penetration test, forensic analysis, right? This profession is under security assessment, right? And this all of these professions are separate, independent, explicit, right? Now, multi-phase complexity and skill set means should be aware of the technology, domain, and system, right? That's in the beginning what I mentioned, right? And this profession, every IT industry, IT-based industry, there is a need. Means that's why now it is a government example. Government made a mandatory. Every financial entity must have a chief information security officer. I mean, that is it's one explicit example. If it is every e-commerce, every government, everyone will have explicit security management. Any R&D or engineering service development will have engineering, and there are certain organization will have a in-house, or they take expert consultant for security assessment as well, right? And it is a this is nothing but this not to visualize the security career path as something like wearing a hooded t-shirt and sitting in a dark. No, it is a structured engineering field. Means it is taught in education institutions, certifications, and government organizations and R&D institutions. It is a structured engineering field like any other electronics, civil, computer science engineering, right? And each domain means if you take 5G as a domain, it needs explicit expertise. Banking, IoT, right? These are all enterprise, e-commerce, and need a different explicit expertise to have control on the security environment, security part. Now, certain attributes the security profession need to have. Again, these are my point of view. You can say these are all from the public domain. These are all generic in nature. Public domain is you can search in Google what I need to have as a profession attribute. You can say certain things are in generic. Means if you say what is means it need a great respect for testing, right? General perception of the engineer who has just come out of the college, they say they want to be a developer. Right? Development is good, but testing, if you say in the product life cycle, 80 to 85% of the product life cycle is involved testing. Means if someone need to have a testing as a respect, right? And other thing is it's a reverse in engineering. Someone need to be developing a skill set, right? Unfortunately, the reverse engineering is not structurally taught in qualification in education institutions, right? In the security context, security is nothing but ensuring only specific angle, implementation and testing, right? And reverse engineering means this security expert will come into picture when certain things are already done, right? That they will need to do reverse engineering, ensure whether it is done correctly or not. It needs different level of physical and mental endurance. Means just to look some minor information, one need to sit for several hours, right? It not necessarily it is bound to take certain break and come back and that kind of. It's not step-by-step activities. It's a different involved skill set, and it is a technology agnostic. security expert not necessarily will identify with certain technology of whether development or architecture definition, like only Java expert, only Golang, or only certain operating system like uh, Parrot OS, any of those things. Means for them, the problem statement will be ensuring security, right? In terms of the verification and in terms of the ensuring. That will be a goal. Using which technology, it doesn't matter. Right? And this profession need very high understanding of operating system and networking fundamentals, right? Because the domain comes next. Means every domain using one other IT means IT is the lowest base is OS and networking. On top of it, application comes, right? Means the security always the breach happens. Means, for example, if we say the malware, virus, any of those things, these are fancy words, but finally at the end, these are nothing but some applications running on a OS using network, right? If everything is coming, will boil down to operating system and networking. If someone has a core fundamental understanding, then it will be relatively more easy. And security expert, domain professional need to develop domain expertise. Means it is not possible to develop overnight. Means banking need totally regulatory and privacy requirement. 5G need different real-time requirement and the consumer behavior, those kind of things. Right? Those two are different. Means one cannot say, I understand, I'm security expert, I can do any domain security. Generally, that is not true. Right? And high ethical value is expected. Means if I relate with any of the defense and law and enforcement agency, the tools and techniques are used exactly the same by the hacker and by the security expert. But the way purpose what the security expert uses is to prevent. There is no malicious intent. Right? That way, one need to have very high ethical value. Knowing certain things is not sufficient. Right? And in the public domain, you can say security. These are all generic terms. I don't attribute to elaborate this. These are, in fact, I would say it is any professional, any profession, it is attributes which are essential to grow and develop the specialty, right? And in terms of skill, is a technology, system, and domain. All three has to be keep developing in order to be a specialized profession in security part. And knowing certain things themselves is not, it is possible, it is very easy to develop a skill set, but in the industry, it is not generally, it is respected, right? Means even though certain individuals having a capability, attitude, but still without qualification and certification, it is not respected. One reason could be this specialization itself is still evolving. That way it is qualifications, explicit certification is required. And public domain content to be considered with caution, right? There is quite a lot of information in terms of the Google, right, in the document, YouTube and books, general books available, but without knowing what does it mean. So that need to be taken with caution, right? And it is very easy to get bias with certain half information about, especially the tools and techniques. One need to understand its impact, both from legal and ethical point of view, right? Just if I come to know some way of doing some malicious thing from YouTube, I should be very careful to try out, right? What I'm saying is, in fact, if any of you are just coming out of the college with a security domain interest, not to try things yourself directly on the live domain. If you have any doubt, talk to your superior, your management, your any senior expert before trying on your own. Legal implications are huge. That to now there are data privacy and the security laws are very strict across the globe. These are little bit serious time. And certain IS2 EC Council and all, there are and reputed education institutions, they offer engineering, postgraduate research and specialization courses. Okay. What I mentioned in the earlier slide, that technical leadership, engineering, test, audit certifications are different, right? Means decide first what is it your interested area and look for corresponding specialization. Means not to get misguided. If you get CISSP, you will be able to do ethical hacking. No, that's the leadership part. And if you do certain ethical hacking course, then you will not be able to do security management. Right? Certain things are, these are different for each role. And 5G security, what from all these examples, what you now you'll be able to make out, this involve mobile security, application security, network, cloud, interconnectivity, regulatory privacy, right? Enterprise security. There are multiple aspects are combined. Right? It is recommended to create a focused expertise rather than means instead of creating a profession for 5G security. Then it is recommended to start with some specific aspect like 5G network security or 5G mobile IoT security, right? Or cloud deployment security. Those are start with certain specific focused view rather than try to look everything together at the same time. For understanding everything, look taken together to understand it is fine. But to develop expertise, you need to get into certain specific things. And again, it is as my recommendation, if you are looking for understanding 5G security, 3GPP, anyway, it is there with all references, but it is too much of distributed here and there. Certain things are protocols, certain things are requirements, certain things are deployment part. What I suggest to start with ITSA standards, which are 5G security, which anyway internally refer to 3GPP. These are independent standards, which they also point to respective 3GPP security, right? And I had given the link here. This will be a starting point, what I wanted to recommend. You start from here, after that you go to specific place in 3GPP. Rather than looking multiple places in 3GPP, you start from here, you will be able to get a proper link.